Have you ever gone into your doctor and had them suggest a medical procedure or a medication and you're not quite sure how you feel about it? If this has been the situation for you, you'll definitely want to join this week's episode. I am interviewing and had the privilege of sitting down with author, and she will talk to us about getting a second opinion and the importance of trusting your body intuition, as we also talk about the aging process. Join us this week as we look at trusting your body's wisdom because it knows what's up. Practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your menstrual health, offering period solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitute. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology. Not identity. Come as you are. I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am so excited for today's guest. I have author Susan Salenger here on the show today. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Susan and I connected about her amazing book, her tell you about in just a minute, but we really connected as human beings. She's an amazing soul, and I invited her on the podcast to share her awesome work with you, but also to talk about topics that are near and dear to both of our hearts. So welcome, like I said, to the show, Susan, and who you are and your beautiful book.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction. Who I am, that's a good question, but I'm a grandmother. I have 4 grandchildren, at this point pretty well grown up, and I'm a writer and a researcher. And I wrote Sidelined because it was kind of a journey. Many years ago. I agreed to have some surgery that I knew I didn't need, and yet I agreed to it anyway. In fact, frankly, I insisted it be done sooner rather than later. I had been having some symptoms, they didn't know what, and they wanted to do some exploratory medications, and I knew the medication was the issue. But nevertheless, I guess I was frightened, and so I agreed to the surgery. They did it, they found nothing, and okay, that was that. And then, life goes on. And then many years after that, I was in business with my husband for about 20, 30 years. And we sold the business, and I retired, which lasted about 3 seconds. That was not good for me. And I went back to school and took some anthropology classes. And for one of the classes, I happened to do a paper on women who had hysterectomies. And much to my surprise, I interviewed several women, and several of them had agreed to hysterectomy surgery, and they didn't think they needed it. But like me, they agreed anyway. And of course, that acted as a trigger and kind of jarred my memory. And I just began to wonder how, as women, how do we make our medical decisions, what we think is our own best interest? And so I ended up interviewing about 60 women, or maybe even more, I don't recall at this point, and all of whom had different diseases. And so what I wanted to know was, what did they have in common? How do they do themselves a disservice sometimes without meaning to, obvious? So that's what the book is about. And I think that it's really helpful for women. I learned, for example, that women and men talk to doctors differently. Men are more succinct, women are more descriptive. I learned that a lot of the women felt ashamed for becoming ill. Then that really, the best part of the book, frankly, is the resource section at the back, because so many of the women, I'm a strong proponent of doing your own research. And so many of the women didn't do their research and didn't know how to research. So I have a whole section in the back I've done your research for you. It tells you how to look up your doctor, how to look up your research for you. It tells you how to look up your doctor, how to look up your hospital, how to look up your illness, etc. So it's a very valuable book, if I say so myself.
Oh, that's an amazing resource. One that I wish I had had earlier on in my life. And this is where I just knew we're just so aligned in so many ways because these are all topics, as you've listened to Reproductive Rebel, that I have talked about quite a lot. That information is power, and knowing where you can go for that information is one of the things that I have been a really strong advocate for in my practice, Moon Essence, is providing people with education so that they can make informed decisions about things that are aligned to them.
Right. I think an informed decision, I mean, that's a key phrase because in back, 1,000 years ago when I agreed to the surgery, it was an uninformed decision. I had options then. I mean, you always have options. You can get second opinions. You can wait a week or two. I mean, I wasn't going to die in 24 hours, there were a lot of things I could have done that I chose or not to even thought of. I just went, well, I guess I better have it. Not good. This is a book of, do what I say, not what I did. Because that's how I learned.
Well, but a lot of us learned that way. We think that we're making the most aligned decision that we can, or maybe it doesn't even feel making the most aligned decision that we can, or maybe it doesn't even feel aligned, but we're making the best decision with the information that we have.
Right.
I just look back at my childhood and I look back at it now and I go, nope, I would never put any of my daughters on birth control.
Right.
But, at the time for endometriosis, by a
Right.
doctor, and my mom made the best decision she could with the information she had.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's why the research is so important. And, I just want to make a plug for a minute for second opinions. They're so important. And I did not realize this, but one of the things I learned can look like stress to a psychologist, stomach issues to a gastroenterologist. We really they're human. They tend to diagnose what they're the most familiar with. And I think that's why to get a second opinion, particularly before a serious treatment or operation of any kind, it always.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And when we're dealing with the traditional Western model, we're oftentimes looking at practitioners that work in a very siloed way. This person deals with your uterus. This person, like you said, deals with your stomach. And
Right.
because they work in these siloed environments and sometimes your medical,
Right.
and because they work in these siloed environments and sometimes your medical records don't even make it from one practitioner to another before you have an appointment.
Right.
It makes it very hard to make some of those calls from the Western sense because either they're doing it with partial information or
Right.
they're only doing it through the lens that they specialize in. And they're that anxiety, an emotional symptom, can show up in the gut.
Yes. Right. Exactly. And
Right?
it does.
Mm.
Well, I think my new book is on gaslighting. And I think that it's so important for women. It's so hard to know when the doctor is blowing you off and says that you're in anxiety because he or she could be right. I mean, women do suffer from stress and anxiety more than men do. And so it's really hard to know if they're just dismissing what you're saying or if, maybe I am. I mean, of course I'm depressed. I don't feel good or I wouldn't be here,
Right.
It's really hard to know what's what. Be here,
Right.
It's really hard to know what's what. So that's why before you do anything, I would get a second opinion. I think it's critical.
I agree with you completely. I want to actually go back to one of the things that you said that you found really interesting in your research about shame and guilt around being sick. So
Really?
yes, I do. And I'm really interested in hearing your findings that you presented in the book.
That was the most surprising thing to me because I don't feel ashamed when I'm sick. I get angry, I get pissed off, but I really do. But I don't get ashamed. But so many of the women, let me see how I'd say this. So many of the women blamed their illness on stress and that they couldn't manage their stress. And it didn't matter whether their illness was breast cancer or a rash from nerves. I mean, whatever. the particular disease was irrelevant to this overriding emotion of I should have managed my stress better. It's my fault. And what they felt was that their illness was a public signal to the world that, look, I can't manage my life. That's why I'm sick. So what that did, they were embarrassed and they didn't want people to know them, never even talk to anybody about their illness other than their doctor when they finally went. It was fascinating to me. And I think that it's so important. I didn't know this either until I researched, but there's about 40 or 50,000 diseases out there. And those are only the ones we know about. I mean, now that with there. And those are only the ones we know about. I mean, now that with COVID, it's 50,001 because new ones keep coming. And many of them actually share similar symptoms, which is why I said your symptoms may look like stress to a psychologist or stomach issues to a stomach doctor, because the symptoms overlap. If you go to a doctor, for example, and you say, I'm tired, I have no energy, I want to nap a lot, I have no appetite, I'm just irritable. You know how many diseases those symptoms fit? I mean, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. So not only is that, again, a reason for a second opinion, but there's nothing to be ashamed about it. I mean, we all get stressed, but, there's a lot of people that get stressed that don't get sick. So you can't really say, well, it's my fault. I suppose if you're an alcoholic and you get, liver disease, I don't want to say it's your fault because alcoholism is certainly a disease in and of itself. But there, at least there's cause and effect, but a disease in and of itself. But there, at least there's cause and effect, but that isn't always the case.
You're completely right. And also to take that one step further, looking at it from the female body perspective of things, we are more sensitive to stress. Our hormone cadence in life, we have ups and downs in the way that our hormones present, particularly when we're in our cycling years. Yeah. And it makes our adrenals really sensitive to stress. That expression of stress does show up in our system faster. Stress could look like not getting enough hours of sleep at night. Having a little person come in and wake you up all hours of the night affects your adrenal glands, right? So, and not everybody has that interruption from a little person, but I just use that as an example because, there's a lot of ways that our modern society places demands on women's bodies that exceeds the capacity that they have on board. And we're expected to live in this spring and summer go, go, go kind of producing energy all the time. And if we look outside the window in this state of needing to produce things, it does create additional stressors on our body, which does present as dis-ease or disharmony later on.
Well, and I love what you said about a little person coming in. I don't have little children, but I have a cat. And his new pattern is around 3:30, 4 a.m. He comes and he nuzzles me and he wants to be loved. And then he goes back to bed. And meanwhile, I'm wide awake.
Yes.
Same thing, different animal, but same idea.
Absolutely. Like I have a client who talks about her cat being the disruptive reasons that she gets broken sleep all the time.
It's relatively new and I'm not thrilled. I've tried putting him back in his bed. I've done everything I can. It's just easier to go with the flow and then eventually he goes back to bed.
So, I think that you make some really beautiful points. And I love the fact that you've seen this and you've put this into the literature because this is something I anecdotally see in my practice so often in terms of this theme of shame and guilt. Guilt that I didn't do enough.
Right.
And shame that this is what ended up being the outcome of my not doing enough.
Right.
If any ended up being the outcome of my not doing enough.
Right.
If anybody's been following the show earlier this year, I believe it was episode 7, the episode is called A Woman's Worth, and it talks specifically about this shame and guilt cycle and how critically important it is to acknowledge, intervene in breaking said cycle for your overall health and well-being. So I love the fact that this thread, I love that you're acknowledging it. I'm sad that it's a collective issue.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's exactly what this show is all about, is raising awareness around some of these issues.
Women, I've learned that we're exceptionally hard on ourselves. It's amazing to me. I put together 2 focus groups just because I wanted some geographical diversity. Yeah, I live in California, and I wasn't gonna fly all over the country, so I got women from, wherever, back east, Midwest. And in both groups, very few of the women had ever talked to a doctor about their illness, and I was thinking to myself as they were telling me this, how sad, because we all need support, we all need help, and to be too ashamed or embarrassed to ask for it is truly a tragedy. I'm not that way. I mean, hack me how I am, and I wonder how much time you have to really look way. I mean, hack me how I am, and I wonder how much time you have to really look. But I was amazed. I really was. And as I said, it didn't matter what disease they had. It was the general feeling of it's my fault. I didn't nap enough, or I napped too much, or I ate too much fruit, or whatever. Didn't matter.
Well, and that's actually, I like how you just broke that down. I didn't nap enough. I ate too much fruit or not enough.
Right.
That description right there, that breakdown is what I hear from my clients a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, I had this stomach problem. It must have been this thing that I ate.
Yes. Yes.
And we're always looking, and this is why people get into the nasty loop. I did an episode about this too, of trying to Dr. Google their symptoms.
Yes. Yes.
And it's because we're just looking to feel empowered, and we do not want to be disempowered because we know and we do not want to be disempowered because we know
Correct.
that we're lacking information in some way.
Yeah. Right. Wait, let me say 2 things to that, actually. Number 1, I think, and I mentioned this lightly before, it's really important to recognize just how random illness is. I mean, look how many people got COVID, get lung cancer, and look how many smokers don't get lung cancer. So there isn't always a direct correlation. I want to really make that point. And secondly, don't Dr. Google, please, or Dr. Google if you want, but read it with some insight. Go to the resources in the back. Go to the, here, I want resources in the back. Go to the, here, I won't even sell my book. Go to the mayoclinic.org. They're totally reliable. They have a wonderful website. They're totally accurate. You'll get an overview of your illness. They'll tell you about the diagnosis process, everything. Because Dr. Google is full of misinformation and misinformation. And don't like Mayo Clinic, try Cleveland Clinic. There's just a whole bunch of websites that are genuinely almost 100% reliable. And I think that it's really important to pick the right ones. And it isn't easy. It really isn't.
No, it isn't. And in it time, with quickly available at our fingertips, it
Right.
is hard to be discerning about where you can get accurate information. And I'm going to plug your book, Susan.
Thank you.
So Sidelined is the book that Susan wrote, and she has an amazing reference in that book in terms of places that you can go for well-referenced, well-researched information so that you can get information from trusted sources.
It's called Sidelined: How Women Can Navigate a Broken Healthcare System. And I think while we're subject for a minute of information, the trouble with information and the trouble with misinformation is they're both equally frequently well written, and it's really hard to know which is which. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
I think that's an absolutely excellent point. And I knew that you were just meant to be on. So I feel like I could talk about this topic for an entire episode, but I also wanted to touch upon like one of the connecting points that when Susan and I were doing our screening call to see like if this was going to be a good fit for both of us, she actually referenced it a little earlier in what she said about the fact that when she gets sick, she gets mad about it. Totally a woman after my own heart because I feel the same way. But in our conversation, we were talking about her upcoming project that she's currently working on about women being gaslit. And when that book comes out, I would love to have you back, Susan,
We'll talk
because
about it. Sure.
gaslighting is a huge topic that I see a lot in my practice, and I've also personally experienced. So
I would love to do an episode about just that in and of itself when you
For
have
sure.
all of your data together. But Susan and I were talking about how, and it dovetails with this idea of disharmony in disease, that when we're trying to work beyond the capacity of what our vital energy and our resources that we have on board can handle, we end up finding ourselves in some sort of a pattern of disease. And a lot of times around that, we have these ideas that, well, age is part of the reason why we are automatically going to get sick. And I've always called bullshit on that
Yeah.
because if and how you support and advocate for yourself and all of these kinds of things, then really age itself. And so I thought Susan would be an amazing person to talk about this, both because of where she is in her life, but also the experiences that have brought her to the work that she's doing.
I'm going to pause this incredible episode to share an opportunity for you to join me as a reproductive rebel. As you know, I'm a holistic practitioner who practices with a focus in East Asian medicine. I truly am one of a kind in the way that I practice, and that is a part of what makes me a rebel. I am here to disrupt a healthcare model for women and provide natural and effective solutions for all phases in a woman's life. Do you feel called to make a difference? Already a practitioner working in this space, wishing to add to your toolkit, or you are just a passionate rebel with a calling to make a difference for others, as I was at the start of my career in this field? The Holistic Women's Health Practitioner Program is open for enrollment. I am looking for passionate, committed, and heart-centered people. Who desire to make a difference in the women's health space and desire to make it a place where women feel seen and heard, where their needs and concerns aren't gaslit, but really taken seriously and met with compassion and education. Does this sound like you? If so, please check out the program link in the show notes and schedule a one-on-one talk with me, or join a free information session. Or if you know that without a doubt this is where you want to go, enroll and get started today. Together, we will make a difference for the future of women's healthcare. I can't wait for you to join me.
I have never met anyone as charismatic and downright passionate about women's health as Adrienne Irizarry is. Not only is it just a delight to be in her presence as a friend, but as a student. Her passion for her work, it comes through so prominently, and it helps ignite the excitement that lives inside of me as her student. We literally laugh, we cry, we share, we support. The knowledge being for this work and teaching and mentoring is just astounding. It's so beautiful. I can't think of a better instructor to be working with this topic. We are powerful. Women hold the most beautiful power within their beings. And Adrienne is the perfect example of she. She is the epitome of woman.
And now, back to the show.
I do think age is just a number, although, of course, it has some realities attached to it.
Mhm.
I'm a very high energy person, but not as high energy as I was at, I'm going to be 82 in September. So at 22, of course, I had more energy. And I do wanting to nap a little bit more than I used to. But on the other hand, I am going to be 82, and there's not much, I can't change that. So I've decided to live with it, and I'm starting a new book at 80. I do a lot of weightlifting. In fact, for those of you that are into exercising, well, go to my weightlifting. In fact, for those of you that are into exercising, well, go to my TikTok site. It's Grandma Gaines, GAINS.com, or is it .com? I don't know. It's Grandma Gaines on TikTok, and I will come up. And I'm very strong. I weightlift. Well, what do? I weightlift twice a week and I do times a week. And I'm a very strong proponent of exercise. I've been doing it for like 40 years, and it's never too late to start. So don't let that throw you. But 40 years ago, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis, and they told me that I was going to be one of those women, I'd step off a curb and my bones would shatter. So I started weightlifting. And I have to say, as I said, I've been doing it for 40 years, and the first 39 were hell. I hated it. But now that I'm at 82 and I realize how well I'm doing, all of a sudden I like it much better. But it did take me an awfully long time to get on the program, I have to say. But age is just a number. I'll tell you, we'll share it. I'm very lucky in that I've never had any pain. And all of a sudden my hips started hurting me. And my kids and everybody said, Mom, it's arthritis. You're old, you're going to be 82, get over it. And I thought, well, maybe, but I'm not sure. And I insisted on having an MRI because, maybe, but I'm not sure. And I insisted on having an MRI because, it could have been bone cancer. I don't know what it could have been. But I didn't want to be a victim of my own ageism. I really didn't. So I did get the MRI. And of course, they said, guess what? You have arthritis, which was embarrassing. At least I knew for sure. But my point is, people say, well, I'm old, so that's why this is happening or that is happening. And it ain't necessarily so. That's all I want to add on to that. Please check yourself out if you think you're not feeling quite right. Because here I am at 81 3/4, and I'm feeling fine. My hip still hurts a little bit, but aside. And so I think that that's an important, and that's also incidentally good luck and good genes. I don't want to say that it's all exercise. But nevertheless, it's important not to be a victim of your own ageism, whether we're talking about going to the doctor or going back to school or starting a new book or whatever it is you choose to do.
So many reasons. And this was the whole reason I wanted this topic in this episode is that there is a really big misconception in our culture that after a certain age, we're just,
yes,
our vitality drops off and it's like a slow trek to the end. It's like a slow trek to the end. And that's not the case at all. I'm going to have to check out your TikTok. You didn't tell me about that.
Oh, no, it's so cool.
I can't look at that.
Oh, check it out. Grandma Gaines on TikTok.
I'm absolutely going to do that.
Well, my grandchildren chose the name. I didn't even know it. But I said, what is gains? Well, Grandma, you're gaining muscle. Oh, that's what it means. I didn't know. But, I've got almost 10,000 followers.
That's amazing.
Really funny because one of my grandkids, I have a little guest house in the back. So the kids, because they're teenagers, they have parties back there now. And so one of up and he said, oh, that house, that's Grandma Gaines' house. The house is in there all the time. Isn't that funny?
That's so quiet. So you just made several really important points that I kind of want to point out. Thing number one, okay, is the fact that you are doing strength training. And I tell women this all the time, that in Chinese medicine, there's this understanding that kidneys govern bone, and there's a muscle tug on bone that helps to increase your kidney energy. Okay. Doing weightlifting, we're actually refueling one of the batteries in our body that helps us with our vitality and longevity.
I didn't know that.
The other piece of that is the fact that you were starting to see some weakening in your bones, and in doing strength training, you are finding that Grandma Gaines, it says it all. You're strengthening your bones and your physical structure. And there are a lot of women who are, I hate to use the word afraid, but that's the one that is used by my clients the most often, that they're going to start looking like a man. And the thing is no, we're just not built that way. And while postmenopausally, we are more testosterone dominant than we're governed by estrogen before we stop our bleeding years. And then it allows testosterone to step forward. I can't wait of those Grandma Gaines people because I like weight training.
Yeah.
But I like this idea that as an endomorphic body, I might
Yes.
actually be able to see the results of some of my weightlifting when I get into those years. And so, yes, you do see a bit more body definition because there is more testosterone and less estrogen that is working over the top of the testosterone that you have, because women have all three: estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone. We just aren't like men, we're testosterone all the time, right?
Right.
So that's why weight training prior to stopping bleeding years and weight training after looks very different in terms of how it manifests in the body. But you made an absolutely awesome point about the fact that it is really important for the exercise is important in terms of supporting circulation, but also you're helping to strengthen chi, which that's like essentially our battery where we store this vital energy that we use throughout our life and maintain for our vitality in our older years. So what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and it is a big key part to your success. I mean, you can tell just listening to Susan, if you're not watching this as a video, that Susan has all kinds of vitality in terms of how she talks and her zest for life and all of these kinds of things, which is one of the beginning, because I'm like, you are the embodiment of what it looks like, that if you feel called to a nap, you're honoring it. You are doing exercise, which helps you to maintain that physical balance, because as we age, our circulation starts to get compromised.
Yes.
And according to Chinese medicine, phlegm and blood stasis are two reasons that we start to have some of the stereotypical aging symptoms and pain and other kinds of disease that can show up in the body. And by doing this kind of exercise on such a regular basis and having it be such a part of your life, it's helping you maintain your vitality and your youthfulness.
It really does do that. And I just wanted to address those women that are afraid of becoming too muscular. Unfortunately, and here I exercise and I have very little muscle definition. I just have a lot of fat on my body. I'm not overweight. I mean, I weigh 103 pounds, but my muscles just aren't defined. I'd kill to have more definition, but I don't. And that those women that I think you can see on TikTok, and there's several of them, they are incredibly well defined, but they really lift and they really work out. I mean, we're talking lifting 200 pounds or 150, and come on, who can do that? That's really, and I don't know what, if any, supplements they take. I'm only talking about weightlifting and Pilates. I'm not talking about trying out for the Senior Olympics. I mean, it's a different kind of thing. The one thing that I do notice about aging is things can go in one brain cell and right out the other. It's the damnedest thing. I don't know how that happens. But the other thing about strength training and Pilates, just moving, is it really makes care how old you are. I feel good about my body. I mean, it moves and it does, and it lifts and it bends and it stretches. And that is a real benefit, particularly at this age. You don't think about it as much when you're 40, but trust me, when you're 80, you'll be really proud of yourself. And I do feel that. I really do. You'll be really proud of yourself. And I do feel that. I really do.
That's perfect. My statement actually dovetails really beautifully with what you were going to say about movement and mobility and moving and bending and all of these kinds of things. There was a Netflix series, it was a short series called, and one of the things that they were finding is people who were moving and bending and squatting and things like this, they were the people who were living into their late 90s, 100, right? Because they were maintaining this kind. And you made an excellent point about the fact that you're not powerlifting, you are weight training. And I think that is also a really good point to make too, because in American culture, we tend to think we have to go hard or go home. Everything is to an extreme. Everything has to be so home. Everything is to an extreme. Everything has to be super heavy, really regimented, that kind of thing. And A lot of times there's a lot of supplements behind it. So that was a really excellent point as well. But what we're talking about in terms of maintaining your vitality and longevity is that you are exercising to energize. You're not overextending because that's just another stressor on your body, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you're living in harmony with, yes, I'm having gains. I am doing this for my health. It is a health-centric approach. It
Right.
makes me feel good, mind, body, and spirit, have energy to do all of the rest of the things that you do in your life, up to and including writing this amazing book project
Right.
that you have going right now.
Yeah, I think that was an important distinction between weightlifting and powerlifting. Although I do lift fairly heavy for my age and size, but I'm a long way in bench press, but I can't bench press 100 pounds. I
Mhm.
mean, I just couldn't. And I wouldn't, frankly. I mean, it's too much for my little body.
Yeah,
You have to know when to say that's enough.
but that's an important distinction.
Mhm.
And that's one that we really struggle with in American culture. Distinction.
Mhm.
And that's one that we really struggle with in American culture.
Right.
And I can even extend it out to Western culture in general. Everything is about an extreme.
Yes.
And, you're essentially listening to your body intuition and you're saying, okay, here's my capacity. Here's what I can handle. Thread that we've woven through this entire episode is that your body wisdom, your intuition tells
Yes.
you whether this procedure feels aligned to you, whether this exercise is too much for you. And when we really plug in and listen to that little intuitive voice that goes, this doesn't feel aligned to me, or this feels like too much for me, or, we live a healthier life. We are less stressed, whether that's putting physical stress on the body or emotional stress in the body. We're able to work within the capacity of what our body has to hold us with in that time frame.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important for anybody out there that is thinking of starting an exercise program, definitely check with your doctor. And I say that as it happens, I have a leaky heart valve. I've had it for 40 or 30 years. The leaky heart valve. I'm not, for example, the doctor said, don't lift over half your weight.
Mhm.
So I do bench press 50 pounds, not 25 and 25. I don't know what to call that. But I won't go over that because of my heart. He said, don't deadlift. So I don't, so I do have restrictions because of the heart valve that if I had have been totally unaware of.
Yep.
So I think that's a really important caveat.
Yes. And so many workout programs do have that whole consult your physician to make sure that you're fit
Yes.
for consumption. But it's true,
Yeah.
like when you have different underlying things, like it doesn't mean that you can't move. It means that you have to move within a certain framework, just like
Correct.
you explained. And so I love that you are able to share this wisdom on both sides of the coin because it really is true. Like your mindset and the energy that mindset and the energy that you bring to life and how you support alignment in your life are really important parts of not only knowing when to ask for help and who to ask
Right.
for that help, but also and who to ask
Right.
for that help, but also how to care for yourself and when it's important to set healthy boundaries and say, this
Right.
doesn't feel aligned to me right now. I can't do
Right.
this.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. I think it's really important that we know our bodies, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
I would
Absolutely.
say at this age, if a doctor said have exploratory surgery, and I didn't think that it wasn't necessary, or at least immediately necessary, I would not agree. I would not agree so easily. I probably wouldn't agree at all. I would check it out.
Now, let me ask you the very important little piece here. Do you feel that the confidence in that advocacy for yourself comes from age and life wisdom, or because the work that you've done has made you really question what is present information?
Both. looking back on it, I mean, when this original surgery happened, I must have been in my 20s or 30s. I don't remember anymore. And I was young and I'd never been sick. And I got, you get frightened. But now that I've done the research and I realize how difficult it is for a doctor to make, but now that I've done the research and I realize how difficult it is for a doctor to make an accurate diagnosis, and I don't care if it's Eastern, Western, whatever. I mean, there are so many symptoms that overlap. I mean, people with autoimmune diseases have a terrible time getting diagnosed, as you know. And it's much trickier than I ever realized. And so I think it's a combination of, age, wisdom, living life, and doing all the research I've done. I mean, I didn't know that women felt ashamed. I had no idea. And I didn't know that women talk differently to doctors from men, etc. I mean, there's so much I didn't know. So all of that put together, now I feel pain in the neck for the doctor because they ask questions and, I don't accept anything unless I fully understand it. I guess it's a long answer to your question, but I'll say both. Life experience and professional work. How's that?
I love that. And I think that it's important. You know what? Be a pain in the neck. I'm going to advocate that in the neck because this is your body.
Exactly.
And you are making decisions about what feels good for your body, what feels aligned. And if there are any question marks in the information that you've been given, you are totally within your rights to figure out the answers to those questions, to the best of your ability before you go and have something that is a little more permanent done.
Right. I mean, imagine having a hysterectomy, not thinking you needed it and having it anyway. That's irrevocable.
And I have had lots of, and then they are like, oh, I didn't know I was going to have like hot flashes and night sweats and my hair was going to fall out and nobody told me any of this stuff.
Right. That's what research. Go to the Mayo Clinic, look up hysterectomy. Seriously. You don't want to have surprises are only good at Christmas and on your birthday. Medicines are not great for you.
I completely agree. Well, I have absolutely loved our time together, Susan. You are such a joy to talk with, and I could talk with you for hours. I want to close the episode by asking you to share where people can find your book, and if they want to share where people can find your book, and if they want to get in touch with you, maybe talk a little bit about the upcoming project that you have in case one of our listeners can help you with some of the data that you're looking
that would
for.
Be fabulous.
Yeah.
Just to go to the new project for a minute, I'm desperately trying to find women who have pain. So anybody that would love to be interviewed or would like to hear about how I work and to be interviewed, please let me know. My email address is S as in Susan, C as in cat, and Salenger is SALENGER @yahoo.com, and maybe r@yahoo.com. And maybe, Adrian, you could put that in the show notes so people could find me.
Absolutely.
But the book number 1 is called Sidelined: How Women Can Navigate a Broken Healthcare System, and it's on Amazon and any bookstore. I don't know if they'll have it, but they certainly can order it for you. So feel free. And the new one has a tentative title of No, It's Not in Your Head, Gaslighting, women gaslighting in the medical community. But that's just a working title. It'll be a year or two before that's out yet. I'm still writing it, and it takes a year to get published. So, but Amazon has my...
All right. Well, I will absolutely include that information in the show notes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing your time, your talent, and expertise with us today. We're so grateful to have you. You are such a shining light, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed, my friend. Everything, and also to get a copy of her really great reference, is all going to be included in the show notes. And as always, check us out on the free Reproductive Rebel listeners Facebook group. Be part of the conversation. Let us know what you think about this episode. And until next time, have a wonderful day.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrian Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. And setting up an appointment for one-on-one support,
ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at MoonEssenceMe